I'm the director of Nationally Competitive Awards, and I know some of you, but have not met all of you in this group. So I'm delighted to have some new people to follow up with. And my colleague, Emily Sally, is on the call, and she's dark. Yeah, she's not going to be visible, but she's going to help with the recording when we get started in a minute. And we also have fresh off a stint in France, Calli Brooks, who's an alumni of UK and who was a Spanish and international studies major when she was here, and has definitely put those majors to work since she has been away from UK. And she's going to talk about those various experiences over the next week or so. She's here with us in Lexington for a couple of weeks. And so today she's going to focus primarily on Fulbright. But then she also has some other experiences that she will talk about with you. And we are going to record if we can get, if we can make that happen, just so that we have it for other individuals who would like to get this information, but for whom this was not a convenient time. And I also want to tell people you can put questions in the chat box throughout the Zoom. You can mute and ask a question directly to Calli. I think you're open to having it be sort of casual, right? Yes. So, we're happy to have you all here tonight. We're really delighted that you're even thinking about Fulbright. It's a wonderful program. And so I'm going to turn it over to Calli to let her start. And Emily, I will let you, I guess, hit recording just to see if your speakers work better.
I did start recording and it didn't give me an error, so hopefully it's working.
So I just leave mine on recording pause then?
Yes.
Or should I? Okay. And we have another person in the group. Ellen, welcome. We just mentioned, it says on my screen, if that's what you're seeing, recording pause, but we actually are recording. So just want to make you aware of that. And we are just getting ready to let Calli take it on. And do I need to, let me do the multiple participants can share again, Calli, so that you should have access.
Okay, I might be able to.
Did it allow you to?
Let me just try. This one. And share. Is it working?
Yes.
Is this working?
It is for me. So
big
hopefully...
full screen, everybody. Yep.
Good.
Okay. I see Emily giving the thumbs up, so I'm gonna go with that's okay. Okay, cool. Hi, like Dr. Whitlow said, my name's Calli. I just got back from teaching for the year in France. That was super interesting with COVID. So hopefully y'all's year abroad is a little better and different. But I did end up getting a Fulbright English teaching, like I was an English teaching assistant in Brazil in 2020. So it was for the 2019-2020 year. And then because Brazil is in the Southern Hemisphere, it started from February and ended in November. And so I went for approximately 50 days and then got sent home because of COVID. So obviously my perspective is maybe not as inclusive when it comes to strictly Fulbright Brazil, but I have experiences from the application process, from orientation, and then experiences from teaching in France. Oh, and also I taught in Spain before that. So France and Spain were not with Fulbright, but the teaching I feel like was a very similar experience to what Fulbright would have been. So more on that later. But I wanted to give you guys a little rundown about Fulbright. So the Fulbright program is basically a grant. It's sponsored by the US Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. And we have teaching assistant grants and research grants. And so, like I said, I was an English teaching assistant. Basically, you can just choose a country, apply for that country, and then they sponsor you to be there for normally about 9 months, either teaching or doing research there. And so I think most of y'all are interested in teaching. The biggest goal with Fulbright is to kind of promote intercultural understanding and understanding between different countries and nations. And so when you go abroad, really you're serving as kind of a representative of the United States and of our culture. So you're teaching the language, but you're also teaching the culture itself. And being able to learn about the culture of the country where you'll be, which is pretty cool. And so obviously, it has a lot of benefits to doing that, not only for yourself, but for your students and everything like that. And I would recommend, even though I was only there a month, I'm really sad I couldn't stay the whole year, but yeah, it was a great experience and I'm excited to talk about it. So like I said, if there's any questions at any point, just send them in the chat. And I'm not seeing the chat notifications. So if I miss one, someone just flag me down and I'll answer. Oh, hey, I see it.
I'll
right now.
monitor that. Okay.
Is that from earlier? Yeah, it is. Hello. Yes. Okay, cool. So we'll keep going. We do have a lot of like diversity inclusion is very important to Fulbright. Obviously, the United States is a very diverse place with a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And so in sending these kind of cultural representatives to different countries, we want to fully represent people from all kinds of backgrounds, especially underrepresented audiences and people of color, you know, Indigenous people. We are fully inclusive in that way. And so we just encourage people to apply regardless of the background that you come from. So yeah. And then like I said, we have two different awards that you could be granted, two different grants. So one is for teaching English and one is for independent research. And so as you can see, they give about 2,000 awards in over 140 countries. And for the English teaching assistantship, that's around 1,200. So like I said, 8 to 10 months, and there's about 75 countries you can choose. I applied for Fulbright right after I graduated college in 2018. Wow, has it been that long? Okay, 2018, it's really been that long. I had applied to go to Columbia and I didn't get it, but since I can apply through the university as an alumna, I ended up applying again. I ended up teaching in Spain right the first year after I graduated and then applying again for Brazil. I had some experience living in Brazil before just with short-term volunteer projects, and I wanted to have a better understanding of the culture. I already spoke Spanish and a little bit of Portuguese, and it was for the Brazil program was teaching in a university there. And so I really was interested in teaching university students because most of my experience had been with elementary school students. And so really the Brazil Fulbright program kind of fit me perfectly. And we're going to talk a little bit more about choosing your country and everything in a little bit, but I think it's important that you not only pick a country that you're interested, but pick a country that like maybe caters to your skill set a bit, just because it is a really competitive award. And we want it to be a good fit for you as well as for them. So yeah. Next, this is where I was. If you can see down in the bottom left, that region. So the bottom left, you see that's Brazil. It's enormous. And it in the very, very, very south, there's a region called Rio Grande do Sul. And so I was super south. And the little red in the center there in the middle, it's where I was placed. It's called Ijuí. Pretty rural town. I actually taught in a rural town in Spain too, though. So I was kind of used to that. I come from a rural town in Tennessee. And so I was kind of used to that already, but we ended up getting there. And this is my Fulbright cohort. So this is everybody who is in the same region as me. So in Rio Grande do Sul. And then I want to say there were over 100, Dr. Whitlow, you can, correct me if I'm wrong, but over 100 candidates who end up going to Brazil. Who end up getting the ETA position. It's kind of one of the bigger ones because Brazil is huge, but this was the group that was in Rio Grande do Sul with me. We got there to Brazil and we had an orientation week in Sao Paulo. And that was just the first week we were there. It was super, super awesome being able to talk to people in the airport because we ended up flying, I flew through Canada, which was super random, and ended up running into other ETAs who were headed to Brazil. And so we ended up hanging out. I sat by one of my friends on the flight just by coincidence. And then once we got there, we had a full week where we were kind of given tips about teaching in the classroom, given tips for adjusting to Brazilian culture, tips on safety, on mental health and things like that. And even some Portuguese classes just to kind of brush up a little bit. And so it was super fun. I made a lot of friends that I still talk to this day. And I think that was a big difference going with Fulbright compared to when I've taught through the Spanish government and the French government, is that Fulbright really, I felt super, super equipped and prepared by the time we started. Because I had that week where I had met all the other ETAs, we'd been there for a week, all these people who cared about the same things I did. I got to spend a week with them and it was seriously so fun. So yeah, I was only there a month, but this was the highlight. It was literally so fun. This is my co-ETA. Her name is Courtney. So it was just me and her and Ijui. And I think within our region, at least, there were at least 2 people at each school. And I know that the Brazilian Commission, so Brazil, like Fulbright Brazil, works to place us in the schools. And I heard they paid a lot of attention and really looked into our skill set, our personalities based on our applications and everything like that, and our background to place us in a school that was a good fit for us. So obviously they'd seen that I'd been to Brazil before. I'd lived in a small place in Spain. They could tell I would be comfortable here, which I was in kind of a small rural area. So yeah. This was my apartment. This was just the kitchen. I looked for other pictures. I know I have some, but I couldn't find them. I ended up staying in, I was teaching at a university and they had kind of campus housing. And so I ended up staying there. Courtney and I decided not to live together because we wanted the full Brazilian experience. So I had 2 Brazilian roommates who were studying. They were students. And so just a few years younger than me. And then the campus was literally like you walk out across the road and it was right there. And so super close, which was really convenient for me. There was no AC, as maybe you can tell by the windows being wide open. No air conditioning where I was. That is something you should probably consider when you're choosing your country. It's something that Americans are not used to, but a lot of cultures don't have air conditioning and it's something you kind of adjust to after a few weeks. But that first week was an interesting experience for me, having to open the windows in the morning and then close them in the afternoons and like close the blinds. It was a learning process, but yeah, so this was my apartment. It was super fun living close to campus and everything. Yes, there's a picture. This was my view, like farm, straight up farm. But it was beautiful. Literally, I would wake up in the morning and just hear like all these bugs and animals and stuff like that. It was kind of like, ooh, my Brazilian adventure, And then apart from that, like I said, so this was like the window from the kitchen. And then on the left was the university. So yeah, I think when you pick your country, you should maybe also like think about different ways to learn about the culture. Dr. Whitlow and I were talking about this earlier about how there's a lot of information on the Fulbright website about each country, and each country has its own specifications for like the application itself and for the candidates applying. But obviously the culture of the country you're going to is super important and you're going to be there the whole year. And so obviously you want to pick a place that you feel like you can learn a lot from, but also end up integrating yourself into more or less. So I would advise looking into other resources apart from just the Fulbright website. Like I think Dr. Whitlow said that she was listening to a podcast about, soccer players in different countries and learned a lot about different cultures from that, And so looking into the culture itself is important. But like I said, on the Fulbright website, it has kind of like what they're looking for in each country's Fulbright program. So for example, Brazil was looking for people who wanted to teach in a university because it was pretty much all universities in Brazil. It wanted someone who spoke at least an intermediate level of Portuguese. And looking at that, I, at the time, wanted to be a professor in a university. I spoke Portuguese pretty fluently. They didn't want anyone who had a master's degree. I don't have a master's. Things like that made me think, check, check, check. That seems perfect for me. And so, like I said, Fulbright's super competitive and it's good to keep your eyes peeled on the website for the ways that you fit each country and maybe picking, 10 countries that you could apply to that you could fit and then narrowing it down from there. So yeah. Any questions on that? Sorry, I've been motor mouthing and talking a lot. Any questions? No? Okay. If you have any questions, send them in the chat, but yeah. Let's see the next slide then. Here's some papaya. So I don't know if you've had papaya. I just wanted to include a picture because this was something I kind of learned how to do when I got there. The fruit was super cheap and like vegetables and stuff were super cheap because Brazil and also just because nature, And so I ended up having to Google how to cut a papaya and I was super proud of myself. So I took a picture of it. But when it comes to pay, I'll talk about pay for a little bit, just since I mentioned the fruit was cheap. You get a stipend with Fulbright. And so I'm pretty sure every country gives you a little bit of that stipend before you get there as like a settling in payment. And so that's what we ended up having. We ended up getting a little chunk of that stipend before we even left the country, just so we could have that for like navigating through the airport and like getting there and, you know, buying furniture, whatever. My place was furnished, but buying whatever we needed to once we got there. When it comes to flights, my program had it where they had a partnership with a travel agency. And so I didn't even see the money that was spent. They just contacted me about where I was flying out of and what day exactly I would want to fly out, which we were set to get there. I don't even remember what day, but there was a certain day we had to get there. And so they emailed me, asked me about that, and then they just set up my flight and bought everything. And I was just on my merry way. So I've heard of other people who they had to figure out their own flights, which is kind of nice because you get the freedom of figuring out that flight, but the money was included in their stipend. And so they could just end up spending whatever they wanted to get wherever they wanted, basically. But like I said, a lot of things depend on what country you're applying to. And so with Brazil, that's just how it worked out, that they had a travel agency that was working with us directly. And I really liked that. But when it comes to the pay itself, I never felt like I was strapped for cash or anything once I got there. They pay you pretty generously, especially if you're living in Brazil, in the middle of nowhere, Brazil. It was never a problem for me. And so I guess my best advice would be don't spend the settling in money before you get there. I did a little bit, which I know is not what I was supposed to do. But again, I still didn't have any problems once I got there. And then the way the Brazil one was, it was different chunks. Like I think we got paid after we got there as well. And then a couple months in, and then a couple months after that. And so that's normally how it is. It's like a stipend. They just, you know, send it into your bank. So yeah, let's continue. Here's a guava, another picture of fruit. It's a type of fruit in Brazil and in tropical areas. I had never eaten it, and my uncle, who's from Jamaica, told me you can eat the skin, and I really enjoyed that. So the food itself, I'm kind of vegetarian. I'm like 80% vegetarian. And so when I was there, I was a little worried, but in Brazil, they eat like rice and beans at most of the time, which was perfect. And like fruit and vegetables and everything. And like I said, it was cheap. There was actually a restaurant on like the Brazil campus, like a cantina or whatever. And so I ended up just eating there a lot. But that's something to keep your eyes peeled for when you're applying as well. If you have any dietary restrictions, just looking into the diet of the country where you're going, it could be a little tricky. I'm kind of the idea of like, even if you're a vegetarian, you can find beans pretty much anywhere. Maybe not anywhere, but you could find ways, you know. But keeping that in mind is good as well. So yeah, let's keep going. A little bit about eligibility. Like I said, it's a great program for if you're graduating college right now. Like I said, I applied the second year I was out of college. And so I was classified as a recent graduate, you know. And I would advise also that you apply with the university. It's a great resource. I just got a lot of help when I applied, and it was great, you know, bouncing ideas off of Dr. Whitlow and other people working here at UK within the department about stuff for my application, stuff for my essays. That stuff was just all super helpful for me. So you can apply technically independently of the university. I would advise you don't do that because it's a free resource that you could take advantage of. So why not? Yeah, so you can't have a doctorate. I don't know if any of y'all are PhD students. Don't do that. And then country-specific requirements. Like I said, each country has its own set of kind of needs for who they're looking for. So you'll need to kind of look into the countries you're interested in and then see which one best fits your skill set and your experiences and stuff like that. Yeah, here's some award benefits. Like I said, round trip airfare. So you're not going to be paying for your flights, which is really nice. When I taught in Spain and France, I had to pay for my flights, which was fine. I made it happen. But with Fulbright, it's super nice to not have to worry about that. Like I said, there's a monthly stipend. You get benefits like insurance and everything. So you don't have to worry about if you're sick there. And then there's other benefits that you could have, like language lessons and stuff like that. Oh, another big thing that I totally forgot until just now. So when you're working, you'll be teaching in a school. That could be elementary, middle, high school, college, whatever. It depends on the country. And then most countries end up having you do a sort of side project. And so when I applied, I think I said I wanted to volunteer in elementary schools nearby. I said that on the application. They're a little flexible about that once you get there, but on the application, I said that. And then once I got there, I ended up helping the university that I got placed at. I helped them translate documents because they have like study abroad programs with different universities in Europe. And so I helped translate some of their informational stuff from Portuguese to English. And that ended up kind of being my like side project. But basically you just have to dedicate a certain amount of hours every week to doing something like volunteering, or even just something to better yourself, kind of a self-improvement sort of thing. So when we got there, they told us that we could even do like, I don't know, like a sort of dance class, like a Brazilian dance class or whatever. As long as we devote a certain amount of hours every week to doing that, then that counts as part of our like grant project. I'm pretty sure we were going to have to write kind of a reflection paper at the end of the year on that. But like I said, I didn't make it to the end of the year because of COVID. So, but like I said, it's really flexible once you get there, because obviously if I say I'm going to teach in an elementary school and then I get placed in Ijuí and there's no elementary school, that's like not a good example, but you know what I mean? It depends on where you're placed for like the different projects you can do. But yeah, and then post-grant, so that's pre-grant and in-country benefits. Post-grant, you are a Fulbright alumni, and that is awesome. And I didn't realize that until I applied. But once I ended up getting Fulbright, now when I tell people that I had a Fulbright, people freak out. And so you have a lot of benefits apart from just being kind of famous. You have a whole network of alumni. There's like Facebook groups and different advantages when it comes to government jobs and stuff like that. And so, like I said, it's super, Fulbright's super like hands-on. They're going to make sure you're taken care of and everything like that, which I really loved. So next slide, and I clicked it and there's a lag. Is it frozen? Are we frozen?
Did it not go?
She's not going. Next. Oh, okay. Did I skip any? Is that right? No, I think
You might have skipped the application one. I wonder.
Yeah, I did. I want to go back. Aha, I skipped two because, okay. I hope it stops here. Okay, good. The application components. Yeah, so this is why I suggest that you apply with UK, because it can kind of be overwhelming, and it's really good to have Dr. Whitlow here helping you, and also me. I will be here helping you with the applications. But basically, so you pick a country. You can only apply to one country. Narrow down, pick your country, and then you look at their application requirements specifically, but pretty much all of them are going to follow this format. So you have the basic personal data and program info. So like you go in and you can put in your information online on the platform, stuff like that. You have the essays, and these are kind of the big, obviously your experience matters, you know, where you fill it in and everything, but the essays are a huge factor in the application process. And I remember literally having dreams about going over these essays because we were editing them so much just to make them perfect, because it's so important. You have two different essays. So if you're doing the ETA program, which I assume a lot of you are, you have the statement of grant purpose, which is only one page, and then the personal statement, only one page. And so those are kind of comprised of different questions. And it says on the website exactly what each one is comprised of, but the statement of grant purpose is basically why you want to go there. And then personal statement is a little more background. And so it's a little more poetic, not poetic, but like statement of grant purpose is to the point, and personal statement is different writing style a little bit. But like I said, it's one page max for both of those. And so when probably you guys apply, we're going to work a lot on those essays, on making sure they don't repeat information between them, and we can fit in as much about your personalities and your experiences and your goals and dreams in those 2 pages. And so that's a huge factor of that. Apart from that, you'll need a foreign language evaluation. Dr. Whitlow, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a couple countries that you don't need a language level, correct?
Quite a few, yes. And so that's one thing you need to be very careful about as you're looking at countries. For example, Spain wants intermediate level. Malaysia does not require for you to have any host country language. Vietnam doesn't require. The Czech Republic doesn't require. Germany wants you to have a year or the equivalent. France, I think, says a year or equivalent. So I would say, just as a general rule, almost all of the Spanish-speaking countries now want you to have at least 2 years, be at least intermediate, and some are saying advanced. So if you don't have any Spanish whatsoever, then looking at Spanish-speaking countries might not be the best idea. You might want to look at some other countries. But yes, it is very possible to go on a Fulbright without having a second language. So don't let that stop you.
Right, for sure. Yeah, but normally there is a foreign language. Like Dr. Whitlow said, the Spanish-speaking countries are pretty much all like that, especially European countries like France, Italy, places like that. They're going to have a foreign language requirement. And also in general, I would say it's probably better to know some kind of, I mean, it just helps you connect with the culture, you know, at the end of the day. It's not necessary. Like if you want to go to a country where you don't speak the language and there's no language requirement, you know, totally go for it. I've had friends who didn't speak any Spanish who made more friends in Spain than I did, you know? And so really you can connect with people anywhere. But for me, at least, it was super helpful for me to know Portuguese before I got to Brazil. So I knew what was going on around me, and it felt a little less overwhelming because I, you know, could plug myself in a little better. So you'll need that. 3 references. So like rec letters, you'll end up putting their name in online, and then they'll get an email about filling that out. Think about employers, maybe even professors, people that really know you well, and try to be diverse about that. We could talk more about this when you all apply, but people who've seen maybe every side of you, or like, you know, like one person from work, one person from school, things like that. Yeah, and then a campus committee evaluation. I'm not positive about what that is, Dr. Willow. I don't think, was that there?
That's something that the interviewers have to write up and I submit for you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Which will end up
not
doing
something that you would do. We should probably take that off there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's something we'll end up doing with you once you start applying. And so, and apart from that, transcripts. And then if you're in the arts, you have a few supplementary materials. So like if you're in the performing arts or creative anything, you're going to have to submit a portfolio or something like that. But pretty straightforward. Like I said, the essays are the main point. So I'm going to try to go to the next slide and see if it works for me. Aha. Okay, cool. And then factors in selection. Like I said, they're going to be looking at your background in school. The first part, quality and feasibility of the proposal, that's more for research, but they'll look at your background in school, qualifications, you know, language level, things like that. The third to last point is super important, the extent to which the candidate and the project will help to advance the Fulbright program goals. So really that's, like I said, the main mission of Fulbright is to foster intra-cultural understanding. And so basically, are you going to be able to go as a representative, you know, of American culture in some way? Obviously, you don't have to fit some cookie cut, you know, mold or whatever. But as an American, which you are you going to be able to represent America to this other country? And are you going to be able to like thrive, you know? Obviously, not everybody can move abroad, you know, not everybody's super, just for their own wants and needs and personality, not everybody is comfortable doing that. And so if you feel like you can thrive in an environment like that, which I think, I mean, if you're interested in Fulbright, then you probably can, then definitely we can mention that on the application, like in the essays, somewhere about flexibility and, you know, wanting to connect with people in that way. So.
And if
like
I could interject briefly, Calli, one thing that I think this slide doesn't entirely make clear for those of you that want to do an ETA, it is helpful to have some experience that is either teaching like, or that is considered a transferable skill. So maybe you tutored while you were in college or in high school, or you've been a summer camp counselor, or like Calli, she did a lot of work with Visitor Center. When she was a student here. And so she interacted with lots of individuals. So a wide range of things are very, very useful and interesting to these host countries. But it is important, I think, to have something that shows that you've had some experience that gets you interacting with other people, working with other people. And if you've had some kind of activity where you've been conveying information, those are very good skills from a Fulbright perspective. And so I would say, even for those of you that are applying this fall, I don't know if you're all seniors, but if you're applying this fall and you feel like, oh, well, I never did do anything like that, you still have time, right? Because it doesn't have to be something that you did for years on end. You know, you could volunteer at the Carnegie Center and tutor a student, you know, this fall or the rest of this summer. So I bet you have activities. You may not be able to think of them right at this moment. Calli can talk about more some of the things that she talked about in her application, but you do want to think about what is that skill set that I would bring related to the classroom and conveying information.
Yeah, completely. That's a great point, Dr. Whitlow. And I think, I mean, you can, like Dr. Whitlow said, I worked at the visitor center, and because of that, you know, on paper, it looks like, okay, tour guide, but really showing the campus around is something that I could transfer to a Fulbright application, because I'm, you know, comfortable with people and communicating certain ideas and being a representative of a place, things like that. Or if you're in sororities, fraternities, we can work out how that could fit for a Fulbright grant. So yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and then apart from that, just each individual country's specifications. You'll have to find probably a balance between like the country, you know, the countries you want and which ones you're best fit for. Does that make sense? It's a pretty, like I said, it's a pretty competitive application process. And so finding that balance, that sweet spot of, oh yeah, I'm interested in going to this country, and also it's a perfect fit for me, is like a great way to go about it. So yeah, and then achieving diversity. I mean, duh. So here's the timeline. Right now, we were in the first little box, which is design project and prepare application. So right now, if you're interested in applying, you can talk to Dr. Whitlow. You could even go online and like put in your name and put that you're with the University of Kentucky, and I'm pretty sure it'll log you into our system, so that you can get those free resources and help with your application. The campus deadline is September 9th of this year for the upcoming year, if you're applying for the upcoming year. And so basically we have an internal deadline where we want everything turned in, just so that we have that kind of buffer of the month. Well, first of all, it's Fulbright policy for everywhere, but also it gives you about a month buffer to really finalize it, do the interviews, everything like that. And so the national application deadline is October 12th. By the time October 12th gets here, we will have it so solidified and perfect and finished that you won't even have to worry about it. So yeah. And then November to December, they're looking into it online, like reading through applications and stuff in the US. January through May, the host countries will review the applications and everything. And then March to June is like the final selection and notification. So for example, when I received the one for Brazil, the Fulbright grant, I was notified that I had continued as a finalist. And so correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Whitlow, that means they send it to the host country, right?
Yes, if you, during this National Screening Committee review in November and December, US faculty committees around the country make decisions about who will be semifinalists. And if you are notified that you're a semifinalist, that means you've been forwarded to your host country. So you're applying for an ETA to Spain, and so you're being forwarded to that country. If you don't get named a semifinalist, if you don't make it to that stage, it means your Fulbright is not going any farther during this application year, but you can apply again. And it's not uncommon for that to happen. And it was successful for Calli. So it doesn't mean that you can't learn from the process and apply again. Yeah. And then they do a host country review. And then sometimes you do not get interviewed at the National Screening Committee level. You do on your campus. And then many host countries now have started to add short interviews. I mean, like 10 minutes over Zoom or Skype or something. So, and sometimes that's to check language ability. Sometimes it's just to get a sense of who you are. But not all countries do that. And then final selection, it seems like we always hear about our first person right around spring break. For some reason, it seems like it often works out that way. And most students will know by mid-April or the third week of April. Occasionally someone will, you know, be on pins and needles right through commencement, you know, so.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's pretty much the timeline. So you all have a little bit of time to start your applications and get that process going. I will say it's probably easier to get started sooner rather than later, just because when school starts up, it always is a rush, as you probably know. So, um, and you don't want to wait till the last minute and turn in something that's not your best work. So, starting the application process as soon as possible is what I would recommend. And like I said, me and Dr. Whitlow are here around the office to help you out. I'll have office hours actually every day next week. Well, I'll be in the office from 1 to 5 every day next week. And so if you all want to swing by, and talk about just the application, maybe what country you want to pick, things like that. I know it can feel like a big decision. But I would be more than willing to help out in that way. But, all in all, though I was only there a month, I can envision what my Fulbright experience would have been as like the full year, just from my other teaching experience and everything like that. And it seriously is such an incredible opportunity. And I'm really convinced that this time in our lives, like right after graduating college, when, you know, a lot of us are single, don't have kids, don't have a long-term job, this is kind of the time, if you want to go abroad, that you can do that, you know, in the easiest way. And so I would say take advantage of that opportunity, to have a year where you're paid to live in another country, you know, and have the visa, and, you know, literally are being paid to work on yourself and learn as much as possible and just thrive. And I feel like Fulbright is literally the perfect opportunity for that. And so, go ahead and start your applications. If you haven't, you can go online and put in your name and everything that you're with UK. My theory is that it's always easier to apply and go through it, you know, and then if you decide not to go, you know, worst case scenario, they offer it to you and you reject it, you know. And so go ahead and start your application if you are interested in that. I want to see if there's another slide.
And
No.
Calli, if you can unshare when you, I think this might be the last one. I could show the website real quick.
Okay, stop share.
Okay. I will show then, just so that you guys can see some of what Calli is talking about. There is an applicant tab here for those of you who haven't looked at the Fulbright site yet. And it gives you a lot of valuable information, and it will talk about the application components too, but it will give you checklists, and you go down here to the bottom, and that is where you would set up your application. So it will let you, just like when you apply to graduate school or apply to UK or whatever, you can set up an application, and then you would pick your own password and user ID, and you can go in and out and identify yourself as a University of Kentucky student. And that way, on September 9th, it's very easy for you to hit submit. It just comes to me. It's not going directly to Fulbright. And that way I can set up your interview with you, give you edits and feedback. And I just want to say, to reiterate Calli's point of, it's not too late, so no stress about that, but it is important to start as soon as you can, just so you can get multiple drafts. This is one of those things, it's hard to do it in a single go, because it's hard to write a personal statement, right? We often don't know how to begin, and you don't want it to be just basically your resume with a few extra words. So I would encourage you to really start thinking about that now. I will mention another thing for those of you who haven't chosen a country. We'll just pick, does anybody in the group have a country they want me to take a look at? And I'll give some brief things for you to look at. No? Okay, so I'll just pull up.
Brazil. Okay, Europe.
I was gonna say, I'm in another section. So we'll just pull up, I know Germany has, you'll be looking at these English Teaching Assistant Awards, and they'll tell you how many they have. And sometimes if it's all things being equal, like I really want to go to Germany, or I really want to go to Czech Republic, you know, you might pick the country that has more awards just because it gives you a better shot. But sometimes the country for which you are the best fit only has 2 awards. And so don't worry about that, you know, apply for where you fit the best, and then it gives you information and explains what they want. Some of it's a little bit boilerplate, but a lot of it is not. And so, you know, you want to go through and read very carefully. You know, this is often, you know, sometimes can feel like it's a little bit the same, but some of it will, you want to read it carefully anyway, because some countries will have added additional. Some countries require this supplementary project. Some countries don't if they consider the ETA more full-time. It will tell you about what foreign language proficiency is required. It will talk to you about housing arrangements, placement types. So it will give you a lot of good information, and then you can often go to their specific website and the US Embassy in that country for more information. So it's really important to read through this grant very carefully. And any of you, if you're on this call and you're interested in the research or study option, I'd be happy to talk to you separately about that. Just email me or put a note in the chat box so I can give you a little more detail on that. But for the ETAs, I mean, it's really interesting to just read through a lot of them so you get a sense, to go read 10 or 12. But I would say don't get hung up on, I was telling Calli today, I'll have students who will get it down to maybe 3 or 4 or 5, and then they can't choose and they get paralyzed. And you don't want to get stuck there, right? And so that's where we can help you and help you talk it out and look at the text with you. And sometimes it's helpful to have someone else to talk with you about it. But it's a wonderful program. It offers you a lot of wonderful opportunities, and doing all this preparatory work will also be helpful to you while you're also thinking about graduate school or applying for jobs or other kinds of things that you do, because you're having to do a lot of self-reflection, getting documents together, talking to people who might be recommenders. So you're doing a lot of spade work that is also very useful, that if you are also thinking of applying to graduate school or also thinking of applying for one of these other programs that Calli was on where you teach abroad. And I do encourage you to think about having multiple tracks, because a Fulbright hopefully will come through for you, but it might not. And so you want to also, be pursuing some graduate ambitions or work ambitions or service whatever it is for you. You want to have 2 or 3 things going. So I guess we should open it up for questions. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. There's like a lag. I was going to jump in and say, literally my Fulbright, like my statement of grant purpose and personal statement, I use that as like a cover letter sometimes, and tweak it, but it's true what Dr. Whitlow's saying about how it's super useful just for self-reflection and understanding what kind of a candidate you are for any job position. I literally still use my application today and for other things and tweak it. And I feel like I learned a lot in that way. So yeah, retweet.
So are there any I think there is something in the chat box here.
Research. Do I know anyone that did research? So when I was there, Ellen asked, I know you were an ETA, but did any of your friends or people you met do research? If so, what did they think of their experience? I didn't meet anyone down there when I was there who was doing research, just because they kind of grouped us together with other ETAs. I vaguely remember, but I'm drawing a blank, knowing someone who did a research grant, and it seemed like they really liked it a lot. But
we had a student from UK, an alumni also, who went to Brazil a few years ago on a research, and he did research on tree species and replanting in the Amazon. So we have had undergraduate students who applied to do research, and we had a physics student in Switzerland. We had a math PhD in Finland. We had an undergraduate student in Denmark doing something on dairy milk. We have a Fulbrighter leaving to go and do a graduate study program in Ireland next year, and she has done research on breast milk. We've had a lot. Certainly graduate students will often be more interested in the research, right? Because they're in that phase of their career. But undergraduates can absolutely apply for a research, or you can apply to go and do a graduate study degree. And I can talk to you about those more, because one of the components of applying for a research grant is, one, the statement of grant purpose is longer. It's 2 pages because it's in essence a shortened research proposal. And you have to have an affiliate in your host country. And so you have to have a faculty member or a fellow researcher or someone from an archives who's giving you some assistance while you're there. It doesn't have to be financial. But in the case of our student who went to Switzerland, you can't do physics research on your own pretty much. He was in a lab right, with a group of researchers. Our student who went to Finland to do math research was in sort of a group of, he got folded into a group of graduate students, and he worked with the faculty member, was his mentor. So and sometimes finding that connection can take a little time. So if that's something you think you're interested in, was it Ellen, I think, definitely reach out to me very quickly and let's talk about that.
Also, I put a link in the chat. We had an info session similar to this one. I think it was last summer with a student that did a research Fulbright year. And so if you would like to watch that, it's on our YouTube channel. You'll probably get a lot of similar information, but she's also there to kind of talk about her experience. So that might be something worth looking into.
And we have other people on campus who've done Fulbrights, and then they've come back on campus. We have someone who's in the Patterson School. We have someone's working for the Office of Philanthropy. So we can also put you in touch with other people who have done these kinds of Fulbright experiences. And sometimes we don't have an alumni who's done, you want to go and do your research in Croatia, or you want to do an ETA in Vietnam or something, and we don't have an alum that I can put my hands on right away, but we can reach out to Fulbright, right? And they can help us find someone who's been recently, and we can connect you to people. And Fulbrighters are very generous in sharing about what their experience was like. So we can help you do that as well. But we also have a lot of alum who've been a lot of places, and we have faculty Fulbrighters. And so we can sometimes connect you in very useful ways. We are also doing an in-person information session. I don't know where any of you are.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, we're doing in-person on Monday at 5 o'clock in the Student Center, and the room might have changed. Emily, what is the room number?
Right now it's 350C. We may be changing it to a slightly different room, but if we do, we will put a sign up on 350C. So if you want to come, I would just come to 350C and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so if you wanted to come and ask more specific questions, or if you have friends who are interested and who happen to be in Lexington or on campus, Calli is also going to do a session on, well, I'll let you talk about the two programs, mention the two things that you're doing next week.
Right, yeah, so next week, I will be doing two different information sessions again. One will be Wednesday and the other Thursday. Yes. One will be Wednesday, one will be Thursday. The first one will be on Spain, because I taught through a government program with Spain. It was separate of Fulbright, a little different in several ways, decently less competitive. So if you're trying to get abroad, it's a good, like in general, then I would suggest apply for Fulbright. And if you want to go to Spain, apply for that too. Just apply for everything, honestly. But I ended up going, when I applied for Fulbright, to Colombia and didn't get that. And I ended up teaching in Spain, and it was also an unforgettable experience, and I absolutely loved it. And so the application process is a bit different, and I'll be talking about that on Wednesday. Then Thursday, I'll be talking about how I taught in France. It was a government program as well. So, but a little more similar to the Fulbright application. And it was also unforgettable. I mean, I was there during COVID, so things were locked down. So it was a little strange. I've had a weird couple of years, but it was still, I met a ton of people and really loved learning about the French culture and everything like that. So I'll be talking about that on Thursday. And so if you are interested in getting to Europe, and being there for a year or whatever, or in Spain or France, then you should come through. There'll be a Zoom link as well.
Yeah. And both of those will be via Zoom, and we will record them as well if those times don't work for you.
Yeah. I see a question. Hannah asks, the first year you applied to Fulbright, you applied to the one in Spain as well. Yes. Did you apply to only those two programs? Ooh, good question. Yeah, I think I did. I think those were the only two I applied to. When I was applying for the Fulbright, I almost applied for Fulbright Spain. They accept about 10 people. Is that right, Dr. Whitlow?
Oh, no, they have a lot more than that, but they're hugely competitive. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a lot more than that, but everyone and their brother wants to live in Spain, obviously.
Right.
And so I ended up applying for Spain or I applied for Colombia instead, still didn't get it, but that's okay. But I applied for the Spanish program separate of Fulbright as well, kind of as like a fallback, just because, like we've said, Fulbright is super duper competitive. And I just wanted to be abroad, you know, I wanted to teach for a year somewhere.
And I should mention, I don't know if we made this clear, you can only apply for one Fulbright in a year. So you have to pick one type of program, ETA or research or study, and one country. So unfortunately, yes, sometimes students think that they can put in 3 or 4, but no, you have to narrow. That's why we're talking about that. You can only apply for one. And the general acceptance rate, it's
20, right? I read that today, 20%.
20.
That's what I read. It depends on the country, obviously, but
Yeah, it depends on the country. I was going to say, it's really hard to give an overall. I mean, they had, not last year, Corona's affected everything, but, you know, Fulbright is starting to get 10,000 or more applications, you know, and they give out, you know, 2,000 awards. So that's where they get that 20% figure. But the problem is, of course, is it's not distributed equally like that. And so there may be countries that have very low rates. And you can play around with this if you want. Let me take this off.
yeah.
The only thing is I don't try to game this too hard, because COVID will have changed things a lot, and there can be, you know, changes in the world that cause this not to look the same. So I'll pick Germany just because we talked about that particular grant. But it will tell you, like, for the last 3 years, applications. But because of COVID, right, this is maybe going to look a little different. So for example, the ETAs, you know, they get in the above 300 and for essentially 140 awards. So that sounds horrible. It's not really bad, right? It's a little over 2 to 1. It's really not as bad as you think. You have to think more of the odds of it, you know, than the, but that is a lot of people to sort through for the reviewers. And so you do want to have a strong application, but you shouldn't necessarily be scared off by that, right? And so you can take a look at that. And it's really only helpful if you have 2 countries that you're comparing and you find that one has much better odds than the other one. Because if you're a perfect fit for Azerbaijan and that's really where you want to go, then it doesn't matter if they only have 2 awards and there are 10 people applying, right? I mean, you know, so don't make yourself crazy with this statistic things. And we have had someone in Azerbaijan, so that's why I mentioned it. Other questions that we have?
I have a couple questions. Sorry, do you mind if I just unmute? I don't want to.
I would. That's great. Thank you
Type
so
it all
much.
in the chat. Real quick about the Zoom things for next week. Is it going to be the same link or is it a different Zoom link?
I think it is a different Zoom link. Is that not correct, Emily?
It is. Abby, would you like me to just email you the 2 links? Would that work?
Yes, ma'am. Thank
If you're
you. Sorry
interested,
about
okay.
the dogs.
Sure.
No,
We love dogs.
we love dogs. Yeah.
And then I had a couple questions about, so I'm going into my junior year, so I won't be applying for Fulbright, but I've actually had several people talk to me about it or mention it to me, so I thought it'd be beneficial to come to this and get some more information on it. I was concerned or curious. I have a lot of travel experience and I've studied abroad. I've took a gap year and spent a year in Europe. My parents lived in England for a couple of years because my dad's in the military, and I was curious if that would be an advantage or a disadvantage. I know someone had mentioned, so I studied abroad in England, and they mentioned that the Fulbright, I might not be able to apply for anything in England because I've spent too much time there.
Well, that's possible. I mean, it would depend on the timing. Fulbright is not, I mean, they love people who've been abroad before and they love people who've never been, right? So that's part of the diversity of the group. So they're not going to look at you. It's not an automatic in for you or a demerit or anything. If you have a lot of familiarity with a particular country, they sometimes look at that and say, well, we'd really like, to have you think about someplace else. So, but they don't count study abroad against you. So the fact that you did study abroad in England would be neither here nor there. If you spent many years going to school there in your primary or secondary school years, because your parents were stationed there, that could affect it because they may say, well, you have a lot of experience already. This is not, you know, it's possible that they would look at that and say, you already know this country, right? So, however, I've had, you know, people who like lived in a country until they were 8 or whatever, and they've been in the US. I mean, that's not gonna count in any way against you. Does that help, Abby?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it is great, I think actually that you're starting as a junior. I'm delighted because that helps you think about the kind of program that you want and to be prepared for the kind of program you want. So let's say you wanted to do a graduate study in the United Kingdom, you know, it's important to pick that program in advance and do a lot of research, you know, or you wanted to be an ETA, you know, in Brazil, but you need to brush up on your Portuguese, or you need to get some tutoring experience, right? So that gives you some time. So that's great. Thank you. Other questions? And it's fine to email me afterwards. I'll put my email in the chat, and you might want to do that as well.
You can email me too at any point.
Calli, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, let me send it. Sending my email in the chat right now.
And that way you'll have that. And Calli is currently doing some office hours for us. She is in 211 Funkhauser building, and my office is in Funkhauser across the hall in 219, and Emily is in 221. So if you, Calli's going to be around tomorrow afternoon too. If some of you wanted to stop by or had questions, or I don't actually know the phone number in that office, or if there's even a working phone in there, but you know, you could email Calli and we can figure that out, you know.
Or text me, it's in my email. It's
so
chill,
we can
text
work
me.
it out for you to ask questions and to speak. And don't feel afraid to do that. I don't know anybody that doesn't, you know, if they're thinking about a Fulbright, that doesn't come back and ask questions later, because some of this information just doesn't sink in the first time, you know, and you're like, well, what did you say about how many grants I can apply for or whatever. So don't be afraid to re-ask any of your questions.
Yeah, word. And if anybody wants, I mean, like Dr. Rilla said, you can swing by my office, or you can just email me and we can meet up if you can't make it in those hours I'm here. We can get coffee or something, but we want to be a resource to you. So yeah, just let us know.
So I will, if there's not any other questions at this time, I will thank you all for coming. I'm really delighted because I know summer, you know, can be hard. So we didn't know what kind of turnout we would have. So, so thank you for sticking with us, and thanks to Calli for coming back and being willing to talk to everybody about her Fulbright experience. I'm really delighted to have her expertise to share with all of you. So thank you so much. I hope you're all having a great summer.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.